Okay. Welcome back, everyone, to the first panel session of today, where we will talk about disability inclusive approaches to advance COVID-19 response, recovery, and resilience in ASEAN. The session today would be moderated by Mr. Ruby Amir. He is the founder of Credibilitas, an award-winning social enterprise where they train and support young people with disabilities as they take action on issues that affect their daily lives and strive to make Indonesia a more accessible and inclusive society. Mr. Amir is also passionate about working towards social and environmental justice and understands the importance of structural change to support these goals. Mr. Amir, may I bring you to the floor?
Thank you, Rosalind. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I am very humbled to be the moderator for the panel discussion today. And together with us, we have, a very experienced group of panelists that will share their experience, knowledge, around the, how the region, Asian region deal with the pandemic and how we respond to COVID, and then make sure that we recover and increase the resilience of the disabled community in Southeast Asia. I would like to introduce our panelists very briefly before we go on to the discussions. So I would like to start first with Yanita Oktora. Yanita Oktora is the a member of management committee and served as human resources director for L'Oreal Indonesia. And I believe that everyone's already know.
You are mute. I think Pak Ruby has just okay.
L'Oreal. Yeah. So L'Oreal is a French company, world's largest cosmetic company, areas of hair color, skincare, sun protections, and so on and so forth. And Yanita served as Human Resource Director for L'Oreal Indonesia and has over 18 years of HR experience. She served in different companies outside Indonesia and come back to Indonesia in 2018. And played important senior leadership Sorry, everyone, I got dropped again. Currently, I am in the remote area in Indonesia. I try to make sure that I have backup for the internet connection. So yeah, welcome Ibu Yanita Oktora in the panel. Very, very humble and very grateful to have you here representing the private sector that is already, practicing the inclusive employment policy for people with disabilities. And the second panelist is Dr. Amara Pongsapic, a representative of talent to AICHR. Professor Dr. Tamara Pongsapic is the current representative of Yeah, just want to continue to introduce Professor Dr. Amara. She is the current representative of Thailand to the AICHR, graduated in anthropology from the University of California at Davis, and received a PhD from the University of Washington. She also played important roles in different organizations, including chair of the Thailand National Commissions of Human Rights. And her area of interest and publication covers theoretical and conceptual, including gender and ethnic study, social policy and alternative development, as well as the issue of globalizations and social cultural impacts of development on minority and vulnerable groups. Thank you, Dr. Amara Pongsapich, for joining us in the panel today. Last but not least, I would like to introduce Mr. Lim Puaitiak. He is chairperson of ASEAN Disability Forum. Mr. Lim Puaitiak is a founding member of the ASEAN Disability Forum and presently serves as its chairman since December 2017. He is also a board member of the International Disability Alliance and has been on the executive board as honorary treasurer of the Asia-Pacific Disability Forum. He has served as executive director for a number of OPDs in Singapore, with the last appointment being at the Bisling Center, a charity dealing with the employment of the needy, including those with disability. Mr. Lim was also a member of the senior management team in the National Council of Social Service, the umbrella body for all registered NPOs and social service agencies in Singapore. As a wheelchair user, Mr. Lim aims to make a difference in the lives of people with disabilities and empower them to be contributing member of the community. So welcome, Mr. Lim. Honored to have you in the panel as well. I would like to start with Yanita. So thank you, Yanita, to join us for joining us today, representing the private sector. So I'd like to ask first question. So according to the research by IFES in 2018, L'Oreal had over 1,000 disabled employees. Can you tell us what are the main challenges for your company to hire more people with disabilities in South Asia or Indonesia in particular?
Thank you for the questions, Pak Ruby, and good morning for everyone. Very happy to be here and to share some insights from the private sector, especially where I am at L'Oreal Indonesia office in Jakarta. So for us, I think let's start with what L'Oreal thinks about disability inclusion. Our mission is to remove stigma at L'Oreal and to ensure that people with disabilities feel included and can be a part of our company as well. So that's the first main objective that we have as a L'Oreal group. When asked what it means for us, it means that we are making sure that our place to work is facilitative. We have worked with ILO to understand, the definitions of disability. We're trying to make sure the work environment in all of our offices are accessible and supportive to one's condition, and also to include the understanding of this, working with disability profiles within the company itself. So that's the aim that we want to have in the company. But it is true, if I speak on behalf of Indonesia, there are some challenges for us in hiring these profiles. Finding the profiles is already quite, a homework for us, finding the profiles and then finding and matching the capability with the job description. When we say that we are providing equal employment, that means everybody has the same chance. And sometimes, for certain jobs that are quite complex, it is much more difficult for us to finally decide to hire the profiles with disability. Yeah, so that will be the main challenges, but our effort continues to be done in both ways. On the sourcing part, finding the profiles, and also adjusting and finding the right jobs in the company so that it has more room for people with disability to perform best at the job that we created and designed for the person. Also to ensure that the surroundings, the environment at L'Oreal is friendly toward disability profiles. I think that will be my answer, Pak Ruby, if that helps.
Thank you, thank you. So very important, very interesting that you mentioned that in the way to overcome the challenges that you find in hiring people with disability, finding the right profile, you in the company you do both. You be more creative, to look for that profile. Using different networks. I understand that you are also part of the Business and Disability Forum with
Yes.
the ILO and different companies, big companies. But you also go back to your company and try to adjust and adapt the job so it's adaptive, accessible. And so you basically doing the job crafting in the process. Yeah.
Yes.
So just want to dig more on that. How's the pandemic increase that challenge? Because we are hit by pandemics for 2 years now, right, in Indonesia.
Yeah.
And it hit the sectors, it hits our community very, very hard. So how does that situation can add up to the challenge that you already face?
Yes, it is very true. Our efforts on this topic specifically has started in Indonesia, especially I can speak on the country. Since 2013, we have been doing many efforts on awareness side, awareness for the employees, on accessibility, making sure the offices accessible, working environment, partnership with lots of NGOs, governments, including we are one of the founder and initiator to create the disability network with other companies, especially consumer goods in Indonesia. However, those efforts starts to die down when pandemic hits, on the networking especially, because it's getting tougher to connect and meet people with the like-minded, offline. But then we continue to try creatively to do something online. There are many efforts that we do. Online class specifically on hairdressing, specifically for people with disability. We have a project of creating sign language with disable for beauty, let's say, blush on, contour, what is the sign language for that? We're trying to create a few new sign languages related to beauty with Pusbisindo. So there were many things that we are making efforts to do it during the pandemic, and try to creatively adjust our approach specifically on this topic. But the future is coming hybrid, online plus offline. I think it gives shed to a new light of how we can do things better. Now, I would like to specifically talk about the employees that are working with us. We have actually one employee working closely with us, with me, Michelle. She has hearing difficulties. So it's very difficult during pandemic because whenever we come to the office, people will wear masks. So for her, it's quite a challenge. So, then it's better for her to actually do online meetings where people are seen in screen and not wearing masks. So those are the things that, impacted somehow individually and also the collective effort that we do at L'Oreal.
Thank you so much, Yanita, for sharing those beautiful stories. So inspiring that you have this kind of woman touch, since you are, in the cosmetic business. So, I'm making sure that our community also learn about, the beauty, and also adjusting your working kind of environments to be more accessible and adaptive to those with hard of hearing, situation or condition. So I'll be back for more interesting questions, but I would like to now move on to Amara. So Amara, as a senior kind of, a leader, in this ecosystem, I would like to ask you about how the AICHR led and the drafting and ratification of the Asian Enabling Master Plan. How does the master plan support the economic and civic right of persons with disabilities in the region, and what is the necessary for implementation looking onward from 2022 to 2025?
Thank you, Ruby. I'm here representing the ASEAN Intergovernmental Commission on Human Rights, which is an ASEAN structure supposed to be looking at human rights in ASEAN. And my predecessor, who left in 2018, was instrumental in trying to have ASEAN develop an enabling master plan for people with disability. And he did that by setting up a task force composed of people from the Ministry of Social Development and Welfare, as well as CSOs. And they worked together, having so many meetings, and I'm sure Lynn was part of the task force, and they met 4 or 5 times before being able to come up with this draft. And in the draft, they want to be inclusive and to make sure that CSOs and people with disabilities are included in the drafting process. And that's the way it went. And in the component, in the draft, in the text, we will try to do 3 things. One is to look at policy of governments in ASEAN. And number 2 is provide training for general public to understand people with disability and try to make people more inclusive in their everyday life and work structure. And the third one is try to create cooperations among different agencies. So that's included in the master plan. And the master plan was adopted 2018. And after that, we organized things together with civil society, DPOs, disability people's organization, trying to raise awareness of the public, as well as telling them that they need to be inclusive in their activities, try to include people with disability. I'm very happy to hear how Yenita proceed with her job and being very inclusive and have initiated, good practices. And I hope there are more corporations like her trying to work with people with disability, including in the work structure, as well as create awareness for the public.
Thank you, Amara. Can you tell me more? How does the master plan and how you can imagine that master plan will support the economic and civic right? What are the practical aspects from the master plan that lead the way for the society to flourish in terms of their economic and the civic rights, and especially for people with disabilities?
More specifically, after COVID-19, there have been attempts to raise awareness on your question. With COVID-19, we were not sure that whatever we want or what we propose could be carried out because of the pandemic. And so the UN policy brief was introduced in 2020, and ASEAN have the ASEAN Comprehensive Recovery Framework for inclusivity. So at the moment, after 2020, we tried to promote even more specific, what to call it, activities to encourage people to bring people with disability back to society after COVID. And I'm sure Lynn can tell you more about that. But that's not easy because COVID affected people in general bad enough. So people with disability are worse off than the general public. So our next activity would be to try to work more specifically on the impact of COVID on people with disability and try to see what kind of activities we should be promoting more.
Thank you, Amara. So yes, indeed, pandemic hit everyone, but hit more and hit harder for our community. And really appreciated that your next step would be finding ways on how to support our community to bounce back better from the COVID pandemic. I will now move on to Lim Poitiat, our next panel. I would like to ask you questions on the ADF. Yeah, can you please provide us with a very brief introduction to the ADF? What is its mission and objective?
Okay, the ASEAN Disability Forum was actually started many years ago, around 2015, as a response to how we can get together and bring together all the organizations dealing with people with disability in the region. We started as an informal group, and we only got ourselves registered as a formal civil society organization under Indonesian law in 2016. And in 2017, we were accredited as a CSO for disability matters with the ASEAN Secretariat. And that's how we started, that journey, as Dr. Amara mentioned, working together with AICHA, with SOMSWAT, and with ACWC and the ASEAN Secretariat on framing and helping to give the input on the ASEAN Enabling Master Plan. We started as a loose network of OPDs, and we actually want to achieve and advocate and mainstream the rights of people with disabilities within the ASEAN community. And this augurs and blend in very well with the objectives of the ASEAN Enabling Master Plan that Dr. Amara has so very well described for us earlier, because it really gels very well with what we want to achieve, and that is to promote disability inclusive ASEAN community. So basically we are doing that, and since the time we started and until when the master plan was adopted by all heads of government in November 2018, we've been trying our very best not only to bring the master plan into fruition, but now going forward, because we have up to 2025 to make sure that the recommendation, the 76 action points of the enabling master plan is being implemented by all ASEAN countries. And what we are doing is to be a focal point whereby all the OPDs in the 10 ASEAN countries can learn to advocate and work with government bodies to make sure that the 76 action points are are well understood and then well implemented within the countries that they come from. Thank you.
Thank you, Lim, for briefing us on the ADF and what its mission and objectives. And I'm glad that you're pushing forward to implement it in the region. However, we all know that ASEAN has a very diverse and very kind of uh, varieties or diversity in terms of so many aspects, right? Singapore is different to Indonesia. Indonesia is different to like Thailand and all that. So what do you think is the main challenge on implementing the ASEAN Master Plan until 2021 from ADF perspective?
I think you hit the nail on the head when we say that we are a very diverse group within ASEAN. And I think one of the fundamental cornerstone of the founding of ASEAN is that we respect the autonomy and the independence of each of the 10 ASEAN countries. So whatever works for Singapore, where I come from, may not work very well for countries, let's say in Thailand or Indonesia, or even our new friends from Laos and Myanmar. So each country has to find its own, what I would say, the level in which they can be more comfortable. And I would say the big challenge now is how can we get people to be more aware of the ASEAN Enabling Master Plan and all that it represents in terms of translating 10 different individualized independent countries into what we call the ASEAN community, sharing the same goals, the same vision, and the same hope of making sure that we become as good a community as perhaps what we see now in the European Union, and how we can make sure that at the same time, while we achieve economic progress, democratic progress, we also make sure that people with disabilities are not left behind, and that they are included in every fiber and in every recommendation and in every action plan that's been implemented, so that we have to be very disability inclusive. So I think that therein lies the challenge. But my point is that sometimes governments, funders, international aid organizations, they do not perhaps understand the precise need and how to implement the recommendations without a disability person's perspective. So ADF and all the members that we represent in ASEAN actually can provide that leverage to make sure that, yes, when you talk about inclusion, don't forget, that when we talk about disability, we don't just plan for people on wheelchair. We must plan for our friends who are blind, friends who are deaf, and then even for those who are intellectually disabled, how to make things simple so that they can really understand the messages that's been conveyed. So it is a cross disability, it's a very diverse approach. And I think that therein, while it lies a challenge, but it also lies to me, the flavor, the umami, of putting into action all the recommendations of the ASEAN Enabling Master Plan, because each country will do things in its own way, in its own unique way. For example, Singapore looks at smart city concept and how we can help to digitize, the whole functioning of our country, so that everybody, including people with disabilities, can access services, can do transactions easily, right, with ease. And I think that is now even more relevant, because in a post-COVID pandemic world where it becomes endemic, while we're living with it every day, I think digitalization is the way to go. And that helps a lot for people with disabilities with all the challenges that we face. Thank you.
Thank you. So good to know that you in the master plan you mentioned that every country has freedom in implementing it based on their kind of context and situation, and also we embrace the diversity of each country, and also embrace the diversity of our community, and I've been in a Bisling in the past, and I really amazed with what you do in the center, and I'll go back to you asking more questions about the best practices in Singapore. But let me go back to Yanita and ask more about how the private sector play important roles in the pandemic COVID, especially that hit our community. So, Yanita, can you share with us some of the program highlights, of your company and your inclusive hiring practices in Indonesia? And are you working with other stakeholders such as a governmental agency or NGO? Previously, you mentioned that you are part of the ILO Disability and Business Network. I've been in the meeting for several times, in the past. But can you tell me more? Can you tell us more? Who are your allies? In this kind of movement. If I would say that this is a movement, and who are your allies? You are muted, Yanita.
Yes, I just realized that I was muted. Thank you. It's a very interesting question, because that is what we need to do. We need to come together, everyone. Because like a puzzle, if one is not going at the same pace as others, then it's going to be difficult, and we continuously be dragged down, to create this movement together. We have to stand in the same line, hold our hands together, and move together. I think that's an important notion we need to remember. But from our side, we made lots of initiatives. I shared before that internally, even in the company, by wanting to remove stigma, we have lots of awareness programs for our employees, starting from sensitivity, disability talks for our employees, for our beauty advisors on the floor, disability workshop, digital related workshops. So there's a lot of workshops continuously each year that we do with our employees. Then, of course, there's a workplace situation, the inclusive and supportive working environment, starting from ensuring that the building where our office is are disabled friendly, the sounds of the elevator with each floors, for those who are blind, and so on. Partnerships is a very crucial element to making this work. Starting from ILO, we developed contacts starting 2013, 2014 with Manpower Department, trying to start building more and more connection with organizations that focuses on disability issue. We did in 2016 created a co-founding with other companies, Indonesia Business and Disability Network. It lasted for 2 years. We have many actions, many discussion together, but then it sort of died down, and I think it's something we could reopen again for discussions after the pandemic situation starts to disperse. We have specific classes, hairdressings for the deaf community. We have a project with one of the organizations in our brand Maybelline of a free makeup class. And like I said, we also in Indonesia developed new sign languages relating to beauty with Pusbisindo. And the efforts on recruitment continues to be quite aggressive, I would say. Even without jobs available, we continue to try to meet people, because in principle, that's L'Oreal ways of recruiting. Sometimes we have a job available, and then we find the people, prepare a job ad. But sometimes for very interesting profiles, we do try to find positions that will suit them, and like I said, tailor them a bit, in order for us to integrate this profile with potential, with ability to grow with the company. Of course, globally, we have lots of task force on beating the stigma, breaking the silence. We have also signed with ILO Global Business and Disability Network in 2020. It's a pledge to reaffirm our commitment in this topic, especially in the context of COVID pandemic. Yeah, we have lots of solidarity sourcing. So our partners, our suppliers are employing people with disabilities, and that's something right now. The numbers globally is around 2,400 employees with disabilities are working for our suppliers. So lots of things that we are trying to do and build stronger network to create better employment for this population.
Thank you, Yanita, for sharing that. I think my company, kerjabilitas.com, was also part of your alliance or your partnership, because we've placed, I think, several talents with disability in your company, both as an intern and as a full employee. So glad to be in your kind of partnership as well in Indonesia. I would then move to Amara. So in December 2021, AICHR consulted with OPD partners and organized a workshop with the members of ASEAN sectoral bodies to discuss the importance of mainstreaming disability rights in ASEAN response and recovery. So what were some key findings from the workshop, if you may share with us?
Well, the workshop was designed to be more for exchanges and collaboration and networking. And we identify some of the problems we still face and try to move forward to see what we can do. So with that finding, we reached the conclusion that our next activity will have to try to improve and make sure that the enabling master plan has been distributed and know about. And we recognize that the enabling master plan was drafted before 2018. It was adopted 2018. That was before COVID-19. And so the content in the activities design included in the master plan was not health disaster, but more natural disaster. So we will have to shift to work more on health aspect. Before that, the only natural disaster was given attention, and at ASEAN there is an office to look at rehabilitation in case of natural disaster. But now we have to be more concerned about other kind of disaster. And the health disaster is something that it was neglected when the draft was considered. So we'll move forward trying to expand the job of the ASEAN Rehabilitation Management Center. They call it AHA, the ASEAN, I don't remember the age. Anyway, recovery plan will have to be, AHA will have to be redesigned to expand the scope to look into different types of disaster and the inclusion of the disability people will have to be considered seriously. Participation of all people in the review of the plan. The midterm and evaluation activity is ongoing. So this is a good time to be involved and hope that the recommendation from the midterm evaluation will help improve the master plan for more inclusivity.
Thank you. I think the community will be looking forward to the to learn about the findings from the evaluations and the recommendation that hopefully will incorporate the pandemic situation into the plan. I just want to move to the next question to you, Amara. Recognizing that persons with disability, youth, and other marginalized groups have been disproportionately affected by COVID challenges, what is ASEAN's role in facilitating inclusive response and recovery?
Again, we have to work together. In the past, before 2015, ASEAN have been working in separate silos. Each organization worked more or less alone. And so the Enabling Master Plan they use the term mainstreaming. That means that we bring in human rights aspect into all activities. And so this is still a difficult job because sometimes people working in other areas don't look at human rights at all and don't look at people with disability at all. So our next job, our present job is try to expand that and make every sector aware of the of the need to include people with disability in their work plan. It has been neglected, hardly had not appeared at all many times. So you have to encourage more inclusion.
Thank you. Thank you, Amar, for sharing that. So yeah, I understand the challenge is huge, you know, to mainstream this important aspect of human rights and inclusivity to all sectors. I am one of the witness and experience myself, you know, because especially in Indonesia, people are very generous, so they still use the charity framework, you know, when working with people with disability and when interacting with people with disability. And that's something that we, you know, hope can, you know, be be just, you know, in the future, and hopefully with your kind of initiative as well. I would like to go to Mr. Lim for the next questions. The ADF organized several trainings with ASEAN sectoral bodies and have very good relationships. What experience in implementing ASEAN Master Plan, and what are the experience that you have in implementing ASEAN Master Plan, especially in the COVID situation, and the MNE trainings that you already implement as well?
I think the first thing that strikes me is that there is very much willingness on the part of the ASEAN sectoral bodies to have what Dr. Amara said, a very cross-sectional approach to the ASEAN Enabling Master Plan, because it's very easy for us to look at it from the economic perspective, from the political rights perspective, as well as from the social service provision perspective. But it's always the refreshing part is that we're able to bring all these three divergent views, you know, to bring it in so that we can have a very comprehensive and inclusive approach to how we can help disadvantaged people, especially those with disabilities, to be included within the community. And I think that was what was refreshing, was that the other sectoral bodies are willing to listen and learn and perhaps receive information on how they can tweak, you know, their recommendations and the action plans to include people with disability. So to me, it was very interesting to be able to work with, like, for example, the economic pillar and help them to understand that, look, you know, I mean, people with disabilities they want to have their dignified way of finding a means of livelihood. And I think especially with the challenges of the pandemic, COVID pandemic, many of our counterparts and our friends with disabilities overnight, lost their livelihood. And it is only the beginning, because to us, livelihood is just, and employment is just a means of reasserting our dignity and our right to live within the community. And I feel very sadly when my blind friends from Philippines say, look, I can't go into massage work anymore because COVID doesn't allow me to have close contact with the clients that I have. So what do we do? So a lot of the sectoral bodies now got to work with specialized groups, like for example the blind, and how to reconvert the energy and the drive to find a means of livelihood, to doing things like, for example, packing survival kits or packing these goodie bags so that they can be distributed to other people who are marginalized and kind of disjointed by the pandemic. So I would say that this is quite an interesting way in which we can really bring in together this cross-sectionality approach. And I'm glad that Dr. Amara mentioned about this fundamental shift, from a welfare, social service-based approach to things into a human rights base, because I think that is a very important change in paradigm. Because if we think about social service, then we're talking about, as you said, Mr. Moderator, about doing good, being charitable. But then we forget that, look, I mean, people with disabilities and other people who are disadvantaged need to find the rightful place within the community. And that's basically what we are doing, to reinforce, to reassert our rights to be part of the community that we belong to. Yes, there are many things we cannot do, to be realistic, but there are many things that we can do. So help us to actualize our potential, maximize our potential, and then at the same time, allow us to play our part to be a contributing member of the community that we come from. Thank you.
Thank you. That's so inspiring, so heartwarming to hear your thoughts, on how we can, advance, how we can support people with disability in terms of their livelihood during the pandemic. Yes, I do agree with you that for our community, livelihood is not just only to earn money, but also not only assert, but also reclaim their dignity. And I believe, as you all also believe, that our community is one of the most creative community, in terms of finding ways to, find jobs, find livelihood and all that, because they face barriers since they were very, very young, and how to overcome it, especially right here in Indonesia. You can't go out, without, risk of being hit by car, because we're so, lousy with all those kind of stuff. So they have to find ways, right? So I think, yes, our community is one of the most creative, but we also need support, for that. So next one, what are the lessons learned from disability inclusive approach in Singapore to advance COVID response? We know that Singapore is, is one of the advanced country in responding COVID. So what are the, lessons learned from that practice?
I think, I mean, what I'm saying about Singapore may work for Singapore, but what I'm also trying to be careful about is that there's no one size fit all solution. So what we can actually share is best practices, so that our counterparts and our colleagues in other countries can see where we have got done right, and perhaps to avoid some of the pitfalls. So I would say the Singapore government's approach to this kind of provisions for people with disability inclusive measures. Actually, I can summarize it within 3 words, all begin with the word E. All right. The first stage is engagement. All right. How do we engage not only people with disabilities, but also the families that they come from, and as well as the community that they come from. All right. So we're talking about the people factor, the fact that the public sector also got to come in, as well as the private, the three-piece private sector also people got to come in. So we need to have that sense of engagement, so that to follow the very famous tagline from the CRPD and the SDGs, that nothing about us without us. We engage them. The second E that I'm talking about is actually empowerment. How do we empower people with disabilities to, as I said earlier, to claim reclaim our dignity, all right, in the community that we come from? So the Singapore government feel that, look, let's empower people with disabilities to decide for themselves what they want to do, how they want to do it, and the government say, look, we'll provide you the right resources, right? Whether it's from the community or from the public sector, we will help you to find those resources and empower you to find that place in the community that you belong to. The final E is the word enable. How do we enable people with disabilities? We give the correct resources, we give the correct public awareness, public understanding. I don't think we're looking for sympathy. I don't think you want people to generate sympathy. We just want to create better awareness. All right. It's just like you have a cup of water. It's half filled, a glass with a cup of half filled with water. Is it half full or is it half empty? All right. So for people with disabilities, we are saying that, look, let's accentuate our abilities. Don't talk so much about our disabilities, because we all have disabilities, right?
Yeah.
We all have our own weaknesses. We all have our challenges. But what is it that we can do? And this is what I earlier mentioned about my work in BISLING. So I have a multidisciplinary team of people that do vocational assessment. Why vocational assessment? Because we need to benchmark, right? We need to benchmark where are they now? What are the residual abilities that they have? And then we do train to accentuate their abilities to the point whereby we can place them in employment, either in a sheltered environment or in the public, in the open employment, like many of us are in. So this where
Mr. Lim, I have to stop you right there. I apologize because we're running out of time. I would like to invite the other two speakers or panels to share their closing statement. Start with Yanita and Amara, because we're approaching to the end of this discussion. So if you would like to start, Yanita, what is your hope? What is your closing statement to our audience here, and followed with Amara for the next?
Thank you very much. It's been an interesting discussion, and listening from Dr. Amara and Mr. Lim. So I think from our side, we will continue bring this effort, and we hope to join hands with everyone, to go together, to step together to a better future, especially with our mission and our movement for people with disability.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So glad to hear that from you and your commitment to our community. Amara, how about you?
Similarly, I think we still we have to continue our collaborations and expand our scope of work to be more inclusive and raise public awareness on inclusivity. I think we still need that public awareness on inclusivity of people with disability.
Thank you. And last but not least, Lynn.
Well, as I said earlier, let's engage, let's enable, and let's empower people with disabilities to make them part of the community that we all belong to. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So with that slogans, I would like to thank you all, for sharing your experience, knowledge, and good practices to our audience. And hope that we can collaborate, hope that we can further enable the environment so that we can create, better opportunity, better kind of support, so that we increase and we build the resilience of our community in the region. So thank you so much. And yeah, thank you for joining us, for the audience.
Thank you, Mr. Ruby and all of the panelists for a great session. So I would like to just say that we will have a break after this, and after the break, we will have another panel discussion on innovative strategies and best practices to build partnerships for disability inclusion in ASEAN. The session later will be moderated by Ms. Rubina Singh, the research consultant of Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia. And we will have speakers. We'll have several speakers. The first will be Mr. Siripong Sriaka, the director of ASEAN Cooperative Subdivision. And then we'll have Mr. Colin Blackwell, the founder of Enable Code Vietnam and Hyperion FinTech AG. And then we'll have Mr. Ken Chua, the founder and director of Disabilities Singapore. And then we will have Mr. Rex Bernardo, Disability Rights Consultant, Center for Advocacy, Learning and Livelihood, or CALL, Foundation of the Blind, Philippines. We will have a 15-minute break, so we will come back at 9:45. So everyone feel free to now exit the session, and we will see you at the next panel session at 9:45. Thank you all so much once again.
Thank you, Yadita. Thank you, everyone.
Talk to you soon.